Welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. It's been a sad story coming to us down in the state of Texas. Bond now being set at $1 billion on Wednesday for a man charged with the murder of the death of an 8-year-old boy whose remains were found in Harris County apartment. Now, authorities say Brian Coulter, 31 years old, is the boyfriend of the child's mother, Gloria Williams. He was taken into custody and charged on Tuesday. And again, Williams is 35 years old, has been charged in connection to the case. She was charged with injury to a child by omission and tampering with evidence, human corpse. Williams' bond was set at $25,000 total. And again, according to a medical examiner, an 8-year-old's death had been ruled a homicide by multiple blunt force injuries. Now, the child's skeletal remains were discovered on Sunday at an apartment complex where authorities say 3 other boys, ages 7, 10, and 15, were found abandoned at the apartment. And so this has just been an unfortunate story. The 15-year-old called authorities on Sunday saying his 9-year-old brother had been dead for a year and his body was in the room next to his. He had also told authorities his parents had not lived in the home, in the apartment with him. He did have 2 siblings, though, there, and they hadn't lived with their parents for several months. So let's go ahead and get the latest on this story with our officials down in the state of Texas as they continue to keep us updated on this case.
Good morning. I'm Ed Gonzalez, your Harris County Sheriff, and thank you for joining us this morning as we provide an update to our community on a recent case. There aren't many jobs in our agency that are tougher than those involving abused children. These incidents are horrific, heartbreaking cases of abuse and neglect, and they involve the most innocent and defenseless among our community. On Sunday, our patrol deputies and investigators responded to a gruesome child abandonment case. For many agency veterans, it was the most disturbing scene they worked in their entire law enforcement career. It seemed too horrific to be real. It's hard to even explain to you that feeling. Our investigators immediately began piecing together what happened and trying to unfold a seemingly senseless death of a child who was supposed to be loved and cared for, and trying to understand unspeakable living conditions for the dead child's siblings who were left alone for months to fend for each other. We are here to share what we know today and to share our continued commitment to these children and our community. We must work tirelessly as child safety advocates to protect our most vulnerable, and we must work as a team. Sergeant Dennis Wolford with our homicide unit will be talking through the charges with you and any updates on this active investigation. And I want to emphasize active. It's still an active investigation that is continuing. Briefly, I want to provide a scene recap. On Sunday, October 24th, 2021, at about 3:15 p.m., our deputies received a phone call from a 15-year-old child who advised that his brother had been dead for a year and his body was in an apartment unit at 3530 Greencrest near West Park Tollway. He also stated that his parents had not lived in the apartment in West Harris County with him and his siblings for several months. Our patrol deputies found a 15-year-old and 2 other male children in an apartment unit ages 10 and 7 who appeared malnourished and showed signs of physical injury. They also found skeletal, dry remains. The Sheriff's Office Homicide Unit, Child Abuse Unit, and Crime Scene Unit investigators responded to the scene. The children were taken to a local hospital to be assessed and treated. The Texas Department of Family and Protective Services received emergency custody of them. Now I want to pause just briefly just to say that in the midst of the darkness and this horrific situation, that I'm so glad that that 15-year-old finally reached out for help. I want to say that I'm glad that he found assistance at the end of the other line with one of our call takers. And I'm comforted to know that when he opened the door and there was a Harris County Sheriff's Office deputies there, that they could finally receive the care and protection that they've needed for so long. And that's what law enforcement does every single day, finding people in their darkest moments. The mother of the children, 35-year-old Gloria Yvette Williams, and her boyfriend, 31-year-old Brian Ward Coulter, were located late Sunday night and interviewed by investigators before being released without charges. Now, I think it's important to note that at that point, it's still an ongoing active investigation. We didn't find them until late that night. And so we have to make sure that we're being thorough, not getting ahead of the evidence and the investigation that's ongoing. And so at that point, they were released without any charges. On Tuesday, October 26, 2021, the Sheriff's Office Homicide Unit charged the mother's boyfriend, Brian Coulter, with the murder of the child, who was confirmed to be 8 years old at the time of his death in 2020. The manner and cause of death were ruled a murder by multiple blunt force injuries, according to the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences. The mother of the murdered child, Gloria Yvette Williams, was charged with injury to a child by omission and tampering with evidence. Both Williams and Coulter were taken into custody without incident by our Criminal Warrants Unit investigators, and this remains an active investigation. At this point, I want to introduce Sergeant Dennis Wolford, the lead investigator with our Homicide Unit, that will speak about the child's murder and updates. A lot of this information will still be general. Keep in mind, there are certain things we could answer, other things we simply can't at this point for a variety of reasons. And it remains active because there's always a possibility, as we mentioned, that there could be additional charges, that charges could be upgraded. So it's still an unfolding investigation at this point. But at this point, I introduce Sergeant Wolford.
Thank you, Sheriff. Good morning. Again, my name is Sergeant Dennis Wolford. I'm the supervisor of the Homicide Unit that was tasked with investigating this. It's a group of 6 investigators. The lead investigator is actually Deputy John Craig. Child Abuse also made the scene with us, and they were invaluable in the input that they gave us dealing with CPS and things like that. One of the things that I want to express, I know that there was a lot of people upset that these people weren't taken into custody right away. And one of the things you have to understand is, one, the law of statements, the laws of the state of Texas, and how we get these things into trial. We knew at that point that these children were safe because they were in CPS custody. And, the decision was made not to arrest that night. And the reason is because a lot of evidence has to come in before we can actually file charges, including a ruling from the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences on what caused this child's death. We also had numerous people, forensic interviews with the children and stuff like that had to be done. Plus, we have to corroborate what the children are telling us before charges can be filed. So believe me, we, from the very beginning, me, the 6 of us, the child abuse guys, we were focused on getting these charges done. We wanted to get them done as quickly as possible. But above all murder investigations, child deaths, child murders, they are methodical investigations. And our end goal is to see that justice is served, not to just put people in jail. We want justice to be served. I will answer any questions that I can for you. There may be some that I cannot. Again, as the sheriff said, in my long time of working homicides, this one's up there. This one affected us.
We'll circle back with the questions just a bit. Let me.
Sure. Just.
And I also want to mention that we have members here from our Crimes Against Children unit as well. Lieutenant Lovett and his team are here as well, and so they'll be present if there are certain questions that perhaps they can answer. I do want to just mention a couple things that may come up before we get into other parts of it, is that it's our understanding that the children that were present in the apartment, that there were two fathers involved. Not involved in the scene, what I'm saying in terms of connected to them. We're told, we haven't confirmed it yet, but that one is possibly deceased already and the other was simply not involved in the lives of the children, so they were not in the picture. There's also, I believe, at least 2 other siblings that were not in the apartment that are elsewhere as well. So I just wanted to mention that we are aware of those dynamics as well. I want to just briefly say it in Spanish as well, just recap what we had. El día domingo, el 24, como a las 3:15, recibimos una llamada.
Okay, folks, while they go into a Spanish portion here, we're going to take a quick... While they go to the Spanish portion here, we're going to take a quick 2-minute break here on Live Now from Fox. Stay right here with us. Just a devastating, devastating story here.
Mencionaron también que los parientes no habían estado en unidad por cause, just to see if there's any, I'm sure there'll be questions, but Donald?
What were the children's injuries? You said when you found them, they appeared to be malnourished and physically injured. What were their injuries?
Lieutenant, do you want to speak a little bit to the injuries, or does anyone know just the physical injuries?
So the 9-year-old does have an injury to the jaw that we come to believe was caused to his jaw by the boyfriend, Brian Coulter, several weeks ago. There was no medical attention given for that injury. That injury is going to cause, he's going to have surgery, and that surgery will happen soon. They were very thin. One of the first things I asked them what are they hungry, and they said they were. And the first thing, I don't know if it was because we're cops or what, but they wanted donuts. And we immediately went and got them Shipley's donuts. But the physical injury that was evident to the 9-year-old, that's the only real overt sign of trauma to them as far as physically.
I want to mention as well, because that was something that was very disturbing, is that back to the different parts. We had the dry remains, skeletal remains that were present. So clearly, in our initial observations, the body had been there for a long time, and so that was disturbing. But on top of that, we had a serious injury to another small child that apparently had not received, to our knowledge, any kind of medical attention, any pain treatment or anything like that during the course of this. I also want to point out as well, I mentioned a little bit that the apartment was in a deplorable condition. We saw soiled carpet, no furniture at all, no bedding, no blankets, nothing that we could see, and it appeared to have roaches and flies and just things. It was very bad condition for anyone, especially children, to live in.
I spoke with neighbors who were the ones helping give that 15-year-old food, and they didn't know there were 2 other boys inside that apartment. To your knowledge, did the 2 younger boys ever leave the apartment for several months? Were they stuck in the apartment?
That's my understanding.
Yeah, I do not believe that the 2 young boys were ever allowed to leave that apartment. There is some evidence that perhaps they were locked in, possibly different parts of the apartment, and they were not to leave that apartment, from what I understand.
With what you can tell us, it obviously took, the 15-year-old was brave enough to call you guys, but it did take a year. Fear, what can you tell us about what he's saying, threatening? What took so long to call authorities?
I believe it was absolute fear. What the investigation is leading us to the fact that this mother and her boyfriend have been together for a few years now, a couple years. And over time, I think that the beatings were consistent and mainly, involving the younger children. And the 15-year-old just absolutely afraid and was basically hoping or relying on his mother to to at some point contact law enforcement and advise of his deceased brother in the house, and that didn't happen. And I think after a year's time, the 15-year-old boy finally said enough is enough, and that's when he decided to contact law enforcement.
So those children have been through a lot of trauma, and so, again, I mean, fear, the death of a sibling and other things, it's just heartbreaking, and so the trauma is just at another level.